Don Monroe and Bear.
This is Java Bob Smallsback, and I'm here with some of my friends. These are some of the premier researchers of many things from around the country. It just happened to all come together for a short expedition right near where I live, and so I have the honor of talking to these people, and we thought we'd share a little bit of information about some of the things that during their experiences they gleaned and gathered and put together before all that information gets lost. So Tom, would you introduce yourself and tell us a little about yourself?
Yeah, my name is Ken Iddens.
I'm sorry.
Or some people call me Tom.
I had Tom on the mind when I was talking to you.
Yeah, pretty much just kind of a tumbleweed. I just travel and wander around the West mostly. Anywhere from Arizona to California, Washington, Montana, points in between. Occasionally get back up to Alaska. Had over 25 years in Alaska working up there on remote sites, radar sites for the Air Force. Retired out last of the 90s and just been kind of traveling and wandering ever since. A little bit of a fledgling in the Bigfoot arena type thing. There's no doubts in my mind that everything is there, and it's just a different form of a wild man or another tribe, as the locals say. It's just mattering to find and make connections and get better documentations on it. And to do the research, you got to go in the field. You can't do it from your armchair. And I won't go any farther into the armchair researchers that are out there. But for those that are doing that and not in the field that much, I would ask that you give more consideration to what people say from their research in the field, unless you have something to compare it with. If you don't listen, learn. It's all about sharing. Everybody needs to be as honest as they can, set egos aside, and produce and try to provide information. It's a multitude of people that will bring results in this arena, not just necessarily one individual has some big claim to glory and knows it all. Nobody knows it all. We're all trying to learn and understand.
Well, thank you, Ken. And
you're most welcome.
How did you meet some of these characters here? Some of the characters we have with us here are like Don Monroe, MK Davis. How did you meet Don Monroe?
Well, I met Don Monroe in 1998 at a gun show in Montana. And with Don's personality and as a vendor at the show, we just happened to run into each other, got to talk and visiting, and we just kept running into each other at a few of the shows around Montana. And that was the budding of the friendship that has developed very strongly to this day. So over the years we'd run into each other. After a while I learned of his involvement, research, books, stuff that he's done with the Bigfoot. Had an invitation from Don to do some caving with him down in Idaho, a little bit around in Montana, and I would go out with him on some of the caving ventures. Very interesting, very, gee, I wonder what's around the next corner in some of these caves. I'm not sure how many people look for caves, but if you're traveling out there in a nomadic style, you seek shelter, and you can have wonderful temperatures year-round. The dead of winter, the inside of your cave is a nice cool ambient temperature. The hot of the summer is a nice cool ambient temperature. So why not utilize that shelter for what you're doing? And but taking a few plaster casts along with Don, listening to him, studying what he has already found, and trying to absorb and at times go with him and assist and lend a hand to him. He's the leader, he's the kingpin. I'm his man Cato, and I try to help him when I can with stuff.
There you go. Right. Now, did you in these short expeditions with Don, did you ever find anything that shocked you or surprised you, or?
Nothing that I would say that really shocked me, or say would be a major surprise. I know in one of the particular caves, the very fine sand you'll find in the bottom of some of the caves inside, in some of the back chambers and stuff. In one particular, had found where there were 3 beds if you're going to sleep in the sand, you want a little depression for your hips. You want a little bit for the shoulder. Kind of a wilderness Tempur-Pedic kind of sand. And so you try to contour it for your shape instead of laying on a flat surface like that. So the stuff that I would find, I try to keep a very open mind with it, but it's interesting and it's intriguing. And you see one thing, and it leads you thinking, well, what about this or this different application? And to look at them from different angles, and don't have one set way of looking at something and say, that's it. Go outside of your tunnel vision. Try to look at it from 3 or 4 different angles and give it some logical approach. We're a culmination of what our experiences are and what our learnings are, but be open-minded about stuff. And you don't say, oh, well, that couldn't be. Well, maybe it could. Don't discount it. At least allow it a chance to have some credibility. I think probably a lot of people would pass by on different things and go, oh, well, that couldn't be, that isn't right. Well, maybe not to us, but maybe to something else. So be very open-minded about what you're doing out there.
So what was your general consensus after seeing some of these things about what might have caused these depressions, and was there any other corroborating evidence that you ran into?
Food items left in the caves that were not there, and they were placed in such a way on some of the sidewalls of the cave and stuff that, you know, a coyote's not going to sneak in and reach up and take them down. It was just not possible for that to occur. They just couldn't get up to high on a side wall like that, or overhangs where there was no chance of doing that.
So I haven't heard you say this, but I'm assuming, well, I have heard you say this,
okay,
but not on this film.
On the film, yeah.
I'm assuming then that you you have a suspicion that there's some type of hominoid or person type.
Oh, yeah, beyond a doubt. I have no doubts at all. Most of that stems from Don sharing stuff he's researched and shared with me. The multitude of plaster castings, I wouldn't even, I don't know, probably 100 or more over the years with different things. Being with him when they're there. There was an incident in Idaho, sort of central eastern Idaho, where a lady lived in a trailer, and her son was there, about 8 or 9-year-old son, and they had contacted Don about something came up to the window one night and looked in. And the poor little boy has been on Ritalin ever since. You know, this was years ago. I mean, the poor little kid was just petrified. And then she called Don later on, I don't know, a week or so later, something like that. But I was down with him, and she said that they had a small little chain link fence around the side yard. Now, this is off in a small town that a good portion of the town is abandoned, old buildings, run down stuff. And the little chain link fence that they had, because she did a daycare at times, the gate had been open all the time. Well, after having something come up and look through the window like that and scare them, she closed that little gate, put the bungees on it. Well, a night or two later, here was this big commotion and racket. The gate was shaking and pounding and carrying on, and it stopped. And then a moment or so later, there was a big smash on it. Something hit the side of the trailer extremely hard, and it tilted her refrigerator forward and rocked it forward. It was on the other side of the wall, of the trailer wall, and this was just to the left of the main personnel door, entry door into the trailer. So with that...
You're military, aren't you? Main personnel door?
Yes, I do have a military background, yes. And so she had said where it was, and I went over and looked, and there was much larger than what my hand could approach to, was when you hit, here were some depressions from the ends of the fingers and part of the heel of the hand. And I put it up there and I go, that looks like a big hand, and a lot bigger than what my hand was. And we had gone up the road, kind of got that out of sequence a little bit. But anyway, we came back, she was there. So when we're talking about this, she said, yeah, they come right up the window. Well, when we had first stopped by, when they weren't home, she was saying, or excuse me, nobody was there. So, but one of the guys with us walked over by the side of the trailer, opposite of the personnel door, and he walked through the tall grass, which was a little over knee high. He says, well, I want to see if something had walked up to the window. Well, it depends on people's backgrounds and their knowledge with nature and tracking. I'm not an expert on it, but I'm not an amateur either with it. You can look at grass that's knee high and see if anything has walked through that. He will displace and spread the grass. Nothing had done that. So he had walked over and looked to see if someone was there. He's just, his lack of experience, he didn't know. So, because the basic thing is what we don't know, we don't know. When we were back, and after we talked with the lady, and the lady, her mother and her grandmother on film that Don had recorded earlier, had said, oh yeah, we see these every June or so. They come through. Been doing it for the last 40 years. And the local county sheriffs just quit coming out to any of these calls. They just go, yeah, right, okay. And they just don't pay any attention to it. But as we were leaving, the lady came out, well, left her trailer, came out by the front. We were getting in Don's car, and she looked over and saw the grass where something had walked through the grass to that side window. This instant panic and fear right then and there. She was just, some tears, and she was just petrified. She says, oh my gosh, it's been over by this window too. And it was real. It was just real. If you study people and watch people, sometimes you can, most time you can decipher, oh, this is kind of a put on or whatever. But no, this was an instant panic shock. So different things like this, the people that have had the close encounters with them, so to speak, you kind of pick up on it, and you go by instinct with it. There's no doubts in my mind, whatever upright form of bipedal friend of ours is out there, that, yeah, it's all real. And, you know, and there's a lot of naysayers and a lot of people that dispute and discredit it based on what? They can't tell you. But it doesn't make sense to them. So, and just one little thing that I do with folks, I'll ask them, when is the last time you saw a skunk in the woods? You see them on the side of the road where they've been run over, but how many people out hiking will see a skunk out in the woods? You normally do not. Some people do. The mass majority never see a skunk in the wild. And they're out there. Because they don't see them, does that mean there's no skunks in the woods?
Yeah, I always ask people, they talk about, well, you think they'd be able to get better pictures and this and that if they see these things. And the example I give is the most populous mammal in the Americas is the vole. And anytime you're driving down the road late at night and something scurries across the road in front of your car, that's usually a vole. I ask people, how many people have taken pictures of those?
Yeah, you don't have
the time.
You
see it, it's there, it runs across, it's gone.
Yeah.
You can't get a picture of that. And we're talking about the same kind of situation.
Same situation.
Yeah.
In regards to that reactionary
time. And there's thousands of them, and there's only a few of these, you know.
Yeah.
So.
When MK were hiking into the long walk and hike down the many miles to Bluff Creek from the top of the ridges, we were going along the one area, and MK was in front about 15, 20 feet. And as we came around the bend in the logging road with the brush, there was, and I hope I'm not stealing your story, but a bear was approaching. And this black bear was walking. It was about 25 feet, and MK hollered out, bear. And the bear spontaneously, instant reaction, ran across from the right side of the logging road to the left into the brush and down. He had a camera in his hand, holding it around there. It wasn't on or, you know, ready to go. There was no time to catch it. It was just blink of an eye and it's gone. So it's, yeah.
Well, what if that was the only bear in the woods? And I was out on a bear expedition.
See if we can get it.
And I was trying to document the unknown bear.
Right.
And
I'd like to point out that that's the same camera around his, hold the camera up because it doesn't show next to your shirt, but that's the same camera in the same position he had when the bear came up.
Exactly, except I had the cap on it. I would have had to remove the cap and power it up. It'd take 4 or 5 seconds to power it up. And the bear, 4 or 5 seconds, he was long gone.
Oh, yeah.
So yeah, I sometimes, even if you have your finger on the shutter, it's still not enough. It just depends on the circumstances, how much surprise there is involved. There was a lot of surprise for me and for him. I looked up and saw him, and he looked up and saw me after I said bear. And
well, I did notice you're wearing a different pair of pants than you were wearing then. Was there a reason for that?
Well, no.
Not quite.
No, I had the creek down there to take care of anything.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah.
He's right. It's not taking a video or even a still picture or any of that of a Sasquatch. The odds are against it. You know, if you get it done, you've done something extraordinary.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And you mentioned about the aspect of the vole. Lots of people have deer charge across the road driving down the highway during the day, at night. How many get a picture of that? Zip. They just don't. It's a rarity. If you're taking a picture of some scenery through the windshield and the deer runs through your picture, you got it. But other than that, you don't have a chance. You know, it's just your reflexes aren't quick enough, and your mindset is not necessarily there to be doing that. You know, you're not the fast draw gunfighter waiting any minute to pull the gun and shoot, or to pull the camera and take a picture. No, it's in the back seat, it's in the trunk. You're just not ready for it, and it'll startle you, and you go, "Wow, look at that! Oh, I have a camera," and it's gone.
Well, what I can add to that is I live pretty much here in the country. We're in my front yard right now, and we have mountain lions and bears. This county is the second largest county in California, and there's only 40,000 people in the entire county, and we have like 10 times more bears than we have people in this county. And I have bears come on this property, cougars, all kinds of wildlife, and I have every kind of electronic equipment you can think of because I'm a field researcher,
right? And
I don't have any pictures of any of them. You know, so
yeah.
Well,
alrighty.
You know, Ken, thank you.
I appreciate your time with that.
I'm sorry I called you Tom. I was thinking of
somebody else.
Somebody else. I was telling Don Monroe a story. And I was trying to remember his name, and when you sat down, that just popped up. You know?
Oh, it's quite all right. That's no problem at all.
So we all call him Bear. So.
Bear. Well, I appreciate that. Thank you for your time.
Oh, thank you. And let's introduce Don Monroe here, if I can get him in here. Hang on, and see what he has to share with us. There's the man himself, Don Monroe.
I'm going to suggest you put MK on next because you're so new in his mind what he just talked about. And they can ad-lib on that a little bit more because this Bluff Creek expedition efforts are pretty involved, and there's many adventures. We can't cover them all, never could, any one of us. We've all three traversed down there several times together. And the adventures there are not synonymous exactly, but they have every time encountered bears. So, well, and MK has always been interested in bears in the west, the east and the south, and they have bears down there too, but they're a different type of bear.
Move your
foot.
Oh, I'm sorry. And I think it'd be good to put him on for that Bluff Creek stuff, and then anything else he wants to say.
I certainly appreciate you having me take the camera off of him, move it onto you, and back to him again, and we'll do that.
Sure.
That makes sense. It's back on the. Let me see. I hate moving cameras around when you're on a thing because it's a movie, because it always makes people motion sick, you know. And I'm getting better at it. I'm going a lot slower. This is MK Davis. Many people know MK Davis. He's one of the probably about the premier expert on the photographic qualities of the famous or infamous Patterson film. And MK, you've been studying that film for probably 40 years now, haven't you?
No, it hasn't been quite that long.
Well, just about. Well, about 35 years.
97 actually is how long I've been. I feel like I've been studying it for an eternity. But 97 is when I started, an earnest effort to try to decipher the film. I wanted to see if the film could tell its own story. I came across a couple of really good photographs from the film that were far, exceeded what you see normally on the shaky, grainy versions that they show on television. And they were real clear. And I knew from that there had to be a better version of the film somewhere. I started an effort to try to find the better versions. So I wanted it to tell its own story, and if it was a hoax, it was a hoax. If it wasn't, it wasn't. What did the film itself have to say? So that's kind of what my effort was centered about. So I've been doing it since '97, so it's been quite a few years.
Well, MK, I've known you for quite a while now, and I know that sometimes you get to be a little controversial, because if you see something and you think it, you're not afraid to just say, this is what I think. And there's people out there who just really, if it goes against anything they're thinking, they think that's terrible. It makes you a bad guy.
I guess that it could be the case, but especially in some of the things, conclusions that I've had. But you know, it can't be two sets of truth.
That's right. And you know, I got to tell you, from a personal aspect, I certainly appreciate the fact that you share what you think, and you say it without any agenda. It just comes, you know, this is what I observed, and this is what I think that is. And I mean, that's really important. And if somebody doesn't like that, they're not much of a researcher. That's
well, I'm willing to change if somebody can come. It's got something, you know, that will demonstrate that that's not true and it's really something else. I'm perfectly willing to change. I'm looking for, you know, the end point to be how it actually happened, the truth.
Well, I guess what I'm saying, MK, is from those of us who are trying to figure out what's really going on there, I appreciate you doing what you do and the way you do it. And there's things that we've discussed, there's things that you and I don't agree on, and you're open and okay with that, just as I am, you know, because neither one of us really know 100%. You know, we make an opinion based on the best of information available to you at the time.
Yeah, it's you know, like I said, it's.
I guess what I'm saying is thank you, and I appreciate the work you do.
It's unraveling a mystery that's had 40 plus years to ravel itself.
Yeah.
You know, and it's got a big head start on you. So it's you're gonna go down some dead end roads. I mean, you're gonna go down some directions that perhaps aren't the right directions, but it all goes back to what you're looking for in the end. If you're looking for the facts and the truth and how the event really happened, then you come back to dead center and you go down to the other correct road. So that's eventually you'll get there. You know, if you persist at it. You know.
I want to take a minute to apologize for all the road noise here. We're on the federally recognized Bigfoot Scenic Byway, but we're in the middle of a forest, and they're starting I believe the Crew tribe is starting to do some lumbering up here, and so every now and again we get a lumber truck rolling down the road here, and that's what you're hearing in the background occasionally. So MK, on this expedition where you ran into the bear, what were you going down there to look for?
Two things, actually. One thing we were going down there to look for was to see if we could come across a salamander that I had seen in 2009. I saw a salamander in a pool that was probably around at 3 feet long. And I've been trying to get back down there ever since, but after 2009 I had a heart attack. Then I had several surgeries, so I wasn't able to get back in there until this year. So I was trying to get back down there to see if I could perhaps get lucky again, encounter that, and either get a capture or get some video evidence of it. And then again, there's the question of the Patterson film. So I wanted to do some things with foot track tests in the actual substrate, you know, that was there, and you know, of course, you can't get enough data. You know, data's always good. It's better to have too much than too little. You know, if you're trying to extrapolate and from it and get some things going for hard facts, you know, you go down, you record it. So I found out, Ken and I found out once we got into the area that probably the opportunities for that are going to be slim to none.
Yeah, there's been a lot of changes in that area.
Yeah, they've pretty much torn out the roads going down there, and they're going to let them go back wild. You know, what's good for perhaps the Sasquatch may be bad for Sasquatch research.
Yeah.
You know, I'm a little torn by it, but I'd like to do some more things down there. But ultimately, I think probably it's a good thing.
Yeah. You know, I talked to some of the elders and some of the older people up here about salamanders, because I'd heard about just asking around, and they said, "Oh yeah, there's huge salamanders out there. We got," and even the people of the Forest Service said, "Yeah, we've heard that there's these things seem to be unique to Siskiyou County, and they're very large. So
This was in the bottom of a
clearly
pool.
something down there.
You know how those mountain streams are. The water's so crystal clear. And I could see straight down in the pool. I saw it moving along the bottom. I could see the mottled appearance of the patterns on its back. But there again, I was ignorant really of what I was looking at. And I knew that there weren't fish like that in Bluff Creek, that big, So I went back over and I told Don, he was with me, and I told Don, there's a really, really big fish, I think, over there in that pool. And Don didn't realize I was talking about really big. He thought this big, something big for Bluff Creek. Well, later on, we come across another salamander. It was about a 10, 11, 12 incher, something like that. And I got some pictures of him. I said, Don, that's what I saw. Right there is what I saw in the bottom of that pool. And then, of course, Don felt bad because he didn't want to get up and go look, But it's one of those things where we know a lot more about it now than we did then. So being ignorance, that sort of thing, it pays to educate yourself, before you go. But I wasn't looking for salamanders at the time. I was looking for something entirely different.
Like you, and I want to say this for the people that haven't. See, I never was one to get out in the woods and look, and had some situations come up where I just finally did, and what I saw just blew my mind because I had no idea there was so much out there. And what I found since that time till now is that you're never prepared because there's so much out there that people just are not aware of. It doesn't affect them on a day-to-day basis. It doesn't make any difference to them. They're not out there to see it. And when you get out in places where people hardly ever go, you see new things that you were never aware of. And so you can't be prepared for everything you're going to find because they are still discovering things they never knew existed all over the world.
There was an educator named Susan Langer, and she made us a comment that I've always thought was very, very true. She says, most new discoveries are suddenly seeing things that were always there.
That's right.
That's
right. Absolutely. And talking about how clear the water is, just we get our drinking water right out of the creeks here in this town, and they come out of Elk Creek, which is over down the river just a little bit here, and across the creek comes this way. But Clear Creek comes down from the Oregon side, comes down this way, and there's a lot of houses on there, so it's not the best water in town. It's good water, but because there are houses on the creek, a lot of people don't want to drink the water out of that creek. About 3-4 miles out of town, going up there's a swimming hole they call the Eddies. And people drive by down there and they look down and they go, wow, that sure is clear water, I mean, look at that. You can see the bottom, and it must be at least 6-7 feet deep, Well, it's over 30 feet deep there. And you can see the pebbles on the bottom from the highway. That's how clear that water is.
That's about like it was there.
Yeah.
It was that clear. I could see the fine detail. But what made me mistake it for a fish was trying to rationalize up here what it was.
Yeah.
I couldn't think of what it was. So it was swimming in the water. I could see the appendages. Like this, I said to myself, well, maybe that's the fins, But no, when I saw the salamander, in a much smaller stream where I could see it better, and it was up near the surface and out of the water, I said, that's what I saw. But I could see the pattern, the modeling on the patterns on the top. So this one was big, really big. I guess I didn't get video evidence, and like so many things, it ends up being just a story of mine.
Yeah.
But I went back to try to get video evidence. Seeing's believing.
Yeah.
Seeing's believing.
I know it. And for those of us who spend some time out in the woods, happens all the time. You see something that you just never thought you'd ever see, and I mean, we're in California. There's not supposed to be any grizzly bears here, and there's a place downriver a little bit. They call it Sluice Box, and during certain times of the year, about 7 o'clock at night, because it's a natural salt lick like out there, a mineral lick. you see these bears walking around out there about the same time in the evening. And I used to go to cast there all the time. And I see all kinds of bears, all different colors. They're black bears, you know, they're every color you can imagine, you know, blonde, cinnamon, black, brown, you know. Well, one day I saw this kind of a blonde looking one, but it had a huge hump in its neck, and it was 3 or 4 times the size of the average black bear out here. I could have sworn it was a grizzly bear. And I talked to the biologist over at the Forest Service. At the time, I was the president of the local fire safety council, so we worked hand in hand, and I knew all the people down there. And he said, well, you know, they do have hybrids out here. There's no grizzly bears, but occasionally the hybrids come down into the high country, and you know, and so even though everybody's convinced you couldn't possibly see a grizzly bear here, there is a possibility. If they're hybrids, they bred somewhere.
Yeah,
you know, so
makes sense.
You never know. There's all kinds of things out here.
I've heard 3 reports of those bears over in the area around Mount Shasta, and over down at Yosemite Park. There've been reports of grizzly bears several times down there. They've been country mountains toward the Nevada border.
Yeah.
So who's to say they're not there? And these are wranglers, cowboy type guys out in the range.
Well, Ken and I were talking yesterday while we were coming back in. We're talking about just to take a look at the side of that mountain right there, just that one mountain. Who's going to go up there and look around?
There's a cave up there you can see from my office.
Really?
Yeah. Let me pan over and see if I can show you what
this
he's
country's
talking
so
about.
rugged. It's so rugged. I mean, how can it possibly anyone say that it's all been covered? You know, and that there's nothing up there that hasn't been seen.
Yep. Now this, what he's talking about is this ridge up here. This is in downtown. Understand, this is in downtown Happy Camp. So
anything could be up there looking at us.
And if we go around, first I'm going to show you Don Monroe while I got the camera pointing this way. Once more. There he is. There's the most. I bill him as the most interesting man in the world. He didn't care for me to do that, but this man has had so many experiences, has been so many places, and done so many things. He's the last of a breed of man that, you know, he's a man's man, and he's the last of a certain breed of men that are just can't say no to adventure. Just can't do it. So now let me show you the view over MK's head, because I didn't have that in the last film. Then when I get over, let's talk to Don a little bit. Now here we are. We're going to go back. Yes. Now this is my neighbor's house. Well, it's our house, but that's what's behind them. We're in downtown. Can you see that? Wait, let me actually see if I can zoom in a little bit. Give you a better view of what's out there. See all the houses
that aren't there?
That aren't there, yeah. So that's where I live. You know, there's not a whole lot out here. We're right in the middle of the forest. Let's get back to reality here. And now I think I'm going to introduce Don Monroe. And I'm trying to do this slowly so I don't get anybody motion sickness. There's Bear, and there is Don. So
in retrospect of what they just said, these two guys, both real article people, these two men who just spoke to you are the real article explorers. If they're not a prototype explorer, we aren't out there looking like somebody is, you know, there's no prototype explorer. Their personalities have to have somewhat similar interests and abilities and dedication, absolutely. But you have here among us all four, including Bob, who's interviewing us, a breed of men. Like he mentioned, they're not around much, the good old boys. I mean, we want to make that clear to you that we're not trying to make an impression on the world by our personalities or what we're doing like that. I could care less, but I really could. And they could the same way too. But in the case of the salamanders, I have to be forgiven for that not going to sea, because I come from the area with salmon and big fish all over the place and steelheads and everything else. And a big fish to me would be not uncommon, even down here perhaps, because there's salmon runs in these rivers, and so I thought maybe a landlocked fish was in there, and I assumed it was. But later in the day, like he said, he saw another salamander, and he did film that, and we put it on the archives of www.artistfirst.com a year or so later, I think it was, anyway, from memory. Now, to me, it was just a hair larger than he said. I'm not certain how large it was, but he said up to 12 inches. I might have gone 14 in my mind's eye. I was right next to it, within a foot or two in my kneecap, when he filmed it. And it wound around like they would. You can't possibly get the length in your mind's eye, but nothing to compare it with size. But it was definitely all of 12 inches. And then the California salamander, as I understand it, called the giant, is supposed to be 12 inches long and maximum length. Well, this could be what it was. It may have been that very thing. But the one he described earlier, his son and I was in the camp when it happened, and I don't know if Brian went down there or not. Did he?
No, I was just down there refilling a water bottle.
And I don't. We all heard the story though, and I reluctant, and I was footsore a little bit, so I didn't go out there. And then in the case of Ken here, he told the truth about the cave things, and there was more, a lot more. We can't tell all the adventures of our adventures. It could be impossible to even write it in 10 books for anybody who goes out in the field for months at a time, or weeks, or years. But there's so many things happen. Like I say, circumstantial evidence is all it is. But I discovered a rat in a cave a while back here, and there was 4 people with me at the time, counting myself, and all had a camera, a small camera, and it wasn't in our hands or right close by. We were doing other things in the cave, trying to find hairs and different things. And when you're working like that, and a rat shows up about a pound heavy, and it's pure white, and got a tail about 18 inches long, and red eyes, and dancing around the cave room, there wasn't one man in the group who had the presence of mind to snap a picture with a camera. It wasn't in his hand. It wasn't there in his hands. It was just here it was, and there it was, and there it wasn't. It was long enough to do it, though. We didn't take a chance to take the picture, and it was so unusual, it just startled us to see this kind of a rat. And I've done a lot of research since then on rats a little bit to find out what it was. They're not a clue. The only one that could be even possible to it is the kangaroo rat of Idaho, in the area that's got a long tail too, not that long, and it's also not the color. The eyes are black. Well, we saw something in that cave that was just an albino, even in the eye shade, that was still on my mind as an important discovery. Not unknown are these beetles you find in caves with antennas on their heads and no eyes. They're not uncommon. We've seen these too in caves in Idaho and Montana vicinity. And I don't know if they're new species or the same ones they have in the Carlsbad Caverns, for example, but there's things out there all over the place that you can discover that are unusual. Down the Columbia River down here by the town of Altoona, on the islands out there, are plants that go back to the Jurassic. And the only place in the United States that the northern hemisphere they know about them. And they claim they're just, one person can destroy that in 5 minutes by just picking them or some darn thing. So discoveries are made everywhere you go that are unusual. I just finished a manuscript that's being right now looked at on horses. And today I want to present that a little bit, just the basics. But my book's going to be titled, when it comes out soon, I hope, in 2012, The Horses Are Coming. And it's the title tells its own story. The horses are coming in the sense that you're going to see some new discoveries about horses that have to do with wild man, perhaps. And this is an offshoot of out-of-the-box discovery, and it's like MK says, he's willing to change if something's proven different. My book's written in such a way that it's open line Friday. You can change it any time you want to. I go along with it. But until a better theory comes along, this is pretty close to some basic ideas. It'll make you think enough that we might get something out of this book that way. I hope to get that book shared with people enough they will come forth with some new ideas. Well, getting along that topic, here's a picture of a Russian scientist. And Russian scientists in Russia, either in the Caucasus or in the Ural Mountains.
Yeah, no, hold it still.
Still, and I can zoom right in on the picture that he's holding.
You'll see this scientist. I think this is Borchnev. I'm not sure. It's either him or Bayanov, Dmitry Bayanov, or Borchnev, one or the other. I think it's Borchnev. He has this.
Now he's not holding a picture. He's holding a white backdrop behind the horse's mane.
The mane has been plaited or braided, either way you want to say it. But plaiting, P-L-A-I-T-I-N-G, is what this has been done, and it's done mysteriously and for hundreds of years unknown how or what by what. But high suspect in Asia and all over Asia, Eurasia, of being a wild biped of some type. Well, as you know, bipeds in the sense of apes and gorillas and so on don't have opposed thumbs and fingers. You can't begin to braid if you haven't got the thumb and opposed finger and thumb. So I began looking at this picture here a long time ago in a book they had out called On the Trail of the Russian Snowman. I think it was done in the 70s before the Iron Curtain they pulled up. And it wasn't published till later on, but I got a copy sent to me about the year 2000, and by Ray Crow, International Bigfoot Society, and I looked it over, and
It was written by Dmitry Bayanov.
okay, that's the author, Dmitry Bayanov, right?
Yeah.
And in that book that he wrote, there's 2 pages of pictures. One was like this somewhat, and I'll get to another picture in a minute here. But when they, there's more coming. When they took this picture, I'm not very prepared for this. They also sent, I'm a little bit behind the 8 ball here. Where'd it go? There it is. They sent this picture here to me, to us too also. It shows a very intricately done one on the bottom here. This is almost impossible to believe unless you understand what I'm going to explain to you in part. That's so intricately done that it's almost impossible to believe it.
Oops,
That anything
sorry.
could do that on a horse's mane. And what's important here to understand, that total picture resembling a necklace almost. You notice above the necklace in the center, the hair is thin. That's the mane, hangs down about 14 inches. It's been shaved. And it's half the body, you might say, of the mane originally. And what's interesting here, that whole picture, the parts that are braided are over twice as long as that mane. Now how can you get a mane twice the length that it is in any kind of manner and braid it without it being shorter?
I can't get it at that angle.
Here, if I...
And so if
There we go. That's a little better.
if you shorten the braid, a braid will shorten anything you braid will shorten up right away. Well, that's been a question for 10 years how that could happen, and I won't get into it here, but there's an explanation for it. And it's off the
Now,
wall, but it...
you probably can't tell from this photograph, but I'll try and explain it. If you look at the very top, you see it's a little boat across the top. That's actually the neck of the horse. I mean, this is still on the horse. This is not a picture, it's not drawn. It's a photograph taken of a horse. And this is something that was found, you know, it's not like the wind blew that and got it all tangled up and did that. And you see up by Tom's, yeah, I'm still doing the Tom thing. By Don's hand, there's another photograph of something similar. You know, these things are found on different parts of Russia, and they started publicizing what they were finding.
Okay, we
And
go from
I'll
there
stop
now.
from there. Yeah.
I've got synonymous pictures, not to this one here, but to these, and a lot of them from different states of the United States in the last 10 years. Most of them have been taken in Oregon, in Idaho, Montana, Nevada on the wild Mustangs, as well as in parts of California, Utah and Colorado from memory, and I missed a couple of states, but as far east as Minnesota. And why it becomes important, because I can't use these pictures in my book. I can refer to them, but I haven't got permission to use these. And I want to give credit to those fellows in Russia who are doing a hard work over there too, because we need their comparables input to this whole picture. I'm excited about the book because it's not just because I wrote the book, it's because it's an informative bit of information that might really ring a bell to those who dare think out of the box and with us on this and way out of the box. And my theory goes on.
I really don't think it's that far out of the box, Don.
I know.
You
but
see something that's plated like that, it's reasonable
Yeah.
to assume that it got done that way. By
what's
something.
By intelligence.
what's important is that one there I had there a minute ago. People on the internet want to say it's pixies and fairies and ghosts and goblins, and we'll give me a break here on that one. So that kind of thinking, who would even dare say that such a thing as that? Here's a picture of that.
Here, let me...
Show it to them if you can.
I'll be your reader. I'll be your reader.
This is the picture that demonstrates what I'm talking about. People want to put that on the boob tube or some darn thing, and I can't believe people would even dare say that.
Well, they have to have some explanation.
And
now, this has been
that's the
going
guy
on.
behind the chair. Don't go out of the field. He's a guy, a cubby cup kind of person.
Well, here's the point. People have to have an explanation for what's going on. And so, without going and investigating, they simply come up with something off the top. Now, a lot of people think that's what's happened with Bigfoot.
Yeah.
The problem here, or not the problem, the issue here is, I happen to know some of the people that Don has gotten some of these things from, and he said, and I've asked people myself, have you ever had your horses come in and had their manes plated? And they go, yeah, it happens once in a while, but we think it's the wind or anything.
Which is nuts.
Well, if you look at some of these things, now some of the ones that Don has from here, demonstrate, from all over the country, demonstrate the same kind of patterns, and they're done. He's gone so far as to figure out what times of the moon phase they're done, all kinds of stuff. He'll get into all that.
You notice here now, this is like it's a circle almost, but it comes down and it's almost like a stirrup. This is auto-suggestive. I'm not saying that's what it is, but it could be very well a stirrup or a handhold of some kind. And it's very strong. You can get on the horse's back, put your foot in here, you don't break it open. You can even stroll around the corral, you know, at a slow pace, if you want to say that. Not galloping, I guess you could, but we didn't do that. We did walk the horses around with a person riding. It was very comfortable to put your foot up on there, sitting in the position of bareback and ride that horse. And the person who did it was one of the Hink women, who were the famous Hink Ranch, and she was amazed how she could hold on to that horse and ride it, and she never thought about it until they showed her how to possibly do it. And then from that beginning, I have about 60 or 70 samples of actual physical hair samples of these things being done. They were just shown last night here in this group, and they're in a box, but they're very close to that right there. And
well, I got to tell you, seeing those now, Don had talked to me about this before and sent me some photographs. And a photograph is one thing, but then he brought in his collection. He's been collecting these for at least 10 years from all over the country, and I know some of the people that he got them from, and these people are not. They're not into any of this stuff. They just happen to say, well, yeah, we have horses. And so, like some of the people he knows from Washington, I happen to know that's not too far from here. And I know that they weren't never aware of anything like this, but they did say, yeah, well, once in a while they'd come back like this. Tom went up there and looked at it.
Very good.
And brought some of these in and shared them with me. I even though I was vaguely aware of all the work he'd been doing, I'd never seen these kind of samples and this kind of clarity. He brought these in and showed them to me, and I was truly amazed.
You notice here now on this one here, his hands over it, there's a braid right here. It's a three-strand braid done like Olga would do, or anybody who braids their hair, you know, Yamanelli. And over here is another one. I think I saw one here by your fingers. And there's these braids right here. Here it is. And these ribbons here, I don't know the story for sure, if they was put in by the creatures or if they're baying off and those guys made an experiment. I'm not certain what happened there.
Yeah, they did some experimentation to see if they would copy it or see if they would remove it.
Yeah.
You know, that type of thing.
We did the same thing recently on the Jensen Ranch in Oregon about a month ago, and he used green and pink ribbons. And Phil Jensen is the one who's working with me very close in this right now, and we've had a number of things happen on that ranch, and I can't tell it all here, but a number of things, and there are 4 or 5 dozen people involved. So anyway, this here was put in our horses up there after they did this to the horses, like I've been showing you, a lot of plating.
And I want to say something. I know who Phil is and know of him, and I've got to tell you, he's one of the most talented artists I've ever seen.
He really is. He's as good as they come, I'll tell you, in this day and age.
Yeah, he is fantastic.
Western artist. Well, Phil works with me close in this thing, and Phil's the one who found out by his deductive reasoning and also physical evidence he showed me on the horses how the braids are lengthened. And I won't go into it now, I'll give away my secret. But it's to be in the book, and it's very well told. And the effort to find this was just, by gosh and by golly, he discovered it. It's very, I would say, covert to the ordinary eye, unless you look hard. Anyway,
well, I've got to tell you, Don, I'll tell you what kind of eye Don has, because I saw all these samples, and I never noticed this, you know, and he pointed out, did you notice that all of these are done by something or someone that is left-handed?
Correct, and also the ones in Russia, if you look at them closely, they're also twilled before braided left-handed. And I've been going on a left-handed thing for a number of years on all kind of different things related to this thing and unrelated to it, in digging in sand, digging water holes. They dig water up from the sand, the creatures, I call them the wild people, wild man, and the feral people. I don't like the word Sasquatch even, I don't know the word Bigfoot at all, or Harry Henderson's. But anyway, the thing I'm trying to put out here, our ribbons in the hair were not disturbed. And I told Phil, well, it was an answer, because when they came back regularly at moon phase, and this time didn't do anything, and found them there, they responded by not doing something. They were shocked too to find that they were recognized. In my estimation, this is auto-suggestion, but I do believe they recognized they've been absolutely discovered, and they're trying to handle now how to deal with that. So we've taken ribbons out of the hair now and left the plates there, and they'll be brushed out this week. And then next moon phase, if the ribbons are on the fence, we're hoping they'll put them back in. We don't know yet, but that's just another facet of the book that's not written yet. But this horse thing goes into almost magical, almost hard to believe things that have happened on these braided horses. And there's a big main reason for this being done besides what a person might think. And it has to do with nourishment, food, and all the things that they would aspire to with mare's milk. If you study Asiatic history and all the nomadic tribes of Asia, Eurasia, and as far back as Genghis Khan and before that even, Attila the Hun, and everywhere you want to go, you find the hordes of the world, warring hordes and traveling hordes where people would drink mare's milk, horse milk, with the cows, and goat milk, and mixtures of different things, and clabbered milk. And I believe, and I know it sounds to the average person back there in coffee land that I'm out of my mind, but I'll tell you what, you got to eat. And protein is have to be derived to nourish these animals in the field in the West. And it's not easy to get protein all year long unless you have something like that to go to, like milk or meat or similar. And that gave away part of my whole idea. But I explain in this book exactly how it's done, perhaps. We found mare's milk entwined, plaited, braided into the manes in some cases. It's absolute. And where you find this, hands had to go somewhere first. And one has to be holding the horse while one of them suckles the milk and turns taken perhaps. And this involves the whole family of the Sasquatch family, call it that. For different reasons they do this. You got to consider the bonding of the horse with anybody who's known to the horse or not. Even the owners of horses can't catch them a lot of times without being very well bonded or accepted. And how a wild man can do this is a real mystery. I explain parts of how they might do it and why during the moon phase. Well, there's 13 moon phases a year basically, and there's days before and afterwards where it's quite bright, and so you got 2/3 of the year when there's moon phase out there shining, and have to do some work in the light. The dark of the moon is not happening then, as I can discover. It's hard to document the exact time in every case, but I have recently done in 2011 on the eclipse of the moon on December 13th. I went down, I drove 600 miles from Bob and Patty Reinhold's home in Oregon over there to the Oregon ranches to get there on the night of the moon phase. I've got pictures in my book I will show that where there's going to be a braiding done that's just almost a moon copy, and it's done in white on the horse's mane, which was an interesting thing too. They chose a color to show, maybe dramatize what you're seeing in the moonlight. It's awesome, and I watched these horses close. The main horses I've been using in this event for the main event of explanation is the Hink Ranch. Neil Hink was a famous horse trainer with Blazer horses, world-renowned. Hollywood knows him. He died 3 years ago. A good friend of mine, and he gave me permission to examine his 135 horses at the time I got there last time. I first got there with 200 horses, but I got to examine 135 horses. And his daughters helped me, and they were lifelong horse persons, and his wife also, Norma Hink. And we found out that 40% of the horses in his stock had been plaited and braided, and 99% of them were females about to drop their young. So this is an interesting thing. And then all those horses form a mare's milk. Estrus milk comes first before they have to drop the colt, and the milk is there, and they were already being suckled before I knocked the table around, before they were even dropped. So they continue to take the mare's milk. The mare's milk is sweet. It's very sweet to the taste. I've talked to people who have done it in the Oregon Territory there. I know them very well, who drank the mare's milk out of curiosity and make ice cream out of it. And people who eat that mare's milk prefer to cow milk, not even knowing that. Well, the protein factor, as I understand, is even more pronounced than it is in cow's milk. Well, it's something to think about, so you see. It first occurred to me before I heard about this in the Idaho Territory of the caves, he mentioned these caves. I've done a lot of work in caves. And a lot of times in the backdrop of the caves were semi-wild horses, or horses on range stock out there, or sometimes Mustangs, and that were wild horses entirely. And I never could make my field glasses really pick up on those horses enough to identify plating being done. I was even unaware of it for a long time, until I saw that book on my Bayonoff. And I had suspects that by people who I believe to discovered in caves. I'll write about that too someday. But were we're doing something with the cattle, range cattle, and or the horses. We found cows.
I think we're running out of film. So
Oh boy.
pause that
Going
here.
too far, too long.
We're going to pause this here and change film.